Mr. Weiler had come in and pulled me into the office, and it's just me and him, and I'm thinking, all right, I got the audience here. This is what I want, right? And I remember him asking his first words, "Why'd you quit school?"
Guys, welcome back to The Six. My name is Sandy Cerami, your host. I'm here with my man Double D, Deshaun Drummond, the man who makes the magic happen behind the camera, Hollywood Bill Capone. And we have a very special guest here today, my man Scott Joseph of J&L Marketing, as well as a Honda dealer. He's got 3 stores around the country. I'm really excited to sit down and talk with Scott. It's one of the guys that I put on my list early. I wanted to get Scott here because I knew he had a story. I didn't know what it was. You shared a little bit with me last night when we had dinner. We won't share too many details about dinner, but the fact of the matter is you shared your story with me last night, and I'm excited for you to share it with our audience today. I want to give a shout out because the room is packed again today, fellas, is it not? As it always is at Bacardi Grill over in Washington Township, New Jersey. John, Lisa, and Alexa Amaratis doing their thing, and we're going to do ours now. So, Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time. This is our first long-distance guest. All right, Scott flew in here from Kentucky, and he's given us some time, and this is the greatest gift that you can give us, is spending some time with us. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into the car business, because your entry into the car business is a great story in and of itself. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so my dad worked for a great dealer with Jeff Weiler.
Jeff Weiler, yeah, great group.
A ton of stores, mainly in Cincinnati and throughout Ohio, and now he's down in Louisville and a little bit in Kentucky, in northern Kentucky. And so Dad was there were 2 salespeople. So back then he was selling cars. There was another gentleman, Jim Hadley, and they would battle back and forth between the 1 and 2 spots, but head and shoulders clearly above everybody else.
So Dad was a player?
Well, before my dad started selling cars, I wouldn't even put us in the middle class category. And so selling cars for us completely changed our lifestyle.
Oh my, I love that.
And so what I as a kid, you start to recognize these stuff, and Jeff Weiler, he's got front row tickets, and back there I'm a big wrestling fan. Yeah. So he's giving me tickets to this. So I grew up idolizing him, my dad, the whole group, and the business, right? Yep. And so one time, I'm skip forward a long way here, and my dad ends up becoming one of his general managers down at Green Tree Toyota, which is right across the river from Louisville. Ended up GM in there for about 17 years, and when I'm in college, all right, my first year at Louisville, I'm working as a lot boy.
Okay.
I don't even know if that's the politically correct
term.
Yeah,
we'll call it the valet attendant, whatever we call it these days.
So I'm sitting there now on my lunch breaks. I would sit in because I knew I was getting into that business. So
you knew at that point in your life, going to college, I'm getting into the car business. It had that much of an impact on you because it pulled your family up financially.
Well, not only that, and when he became GM, it took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So the things that I was able to participate in and/or I guess receive.
Sure. Some of the
benefits. My dad
was
like, this is a game changer. I'm going to do that. I want to run a store. That was my goal.
Okay.
And so, to me, college was a waste of time, at least in my mind. I didn't really want to do it. I hated it.
Yeah.
And so, as I'm going in the lot boy, and my lunch breaks were spent up in the sales training room, and I would pop in these VHSs, and literally I'd spend my whole lunch break watching sales training tapes nonstop. And so I'd be bugging my dad, let me sell, and he would never let me sell. So he's on a 20 group out west somewhere, I want to say California, and I'm in about the second year now of college, halfway through that first semester. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to get a job selling cars. So I called up one of the managers up in Cincinnati from the Jeff Weiler group. I figured, well, that's the easiest path I'm going to have.
No doubt, absolutely.
And so one of the finance managers had just been promoted to sales manager at a new store.
Okay.
All right. And so Jeff just had bought this, and so he was looking to fill his team. And so they asked me, well, can you come up? And when can you come up? I said, I'll come up today. So I drove up about an hour and a half, interviewed.
Decisive, right? That's an early sign of leadership in you, is that, the opportunities there, you were decisive, you took reaction.
I should tell you, I probably never let my son do the same thing.
It's funny you say that. You know, as parents, we want to protect them, but the truth is that their growth opportunities come when they do go out and make decisions on their own. We let them fly.
I agree.
A little bit, you know.
I agree.
Hard to do as a parent.
It is. Know? And so, a bit of a risky move, but he offered me the job on the spot. I took it.
Shocking in the car business that they offered you the job on the spot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. We still see that today, right?
So I was excited. So I literally moved down to the house while my dad's away on the 20 group, dropped out of school, and was selling cars up in Cincinnati, Ohio, starting that next day.
And he comes home from the 20 group?
Came home and said, Dad, Mom, I dropped out of school, I'm selling cars up here, and I was excited.
Did you duck after you said that?
No, actually, I was shocked. They took it a lot better than I really thought. And so it's funny when you're a kid, right, or even as adults, you tend to worry about things. And when something comes to fruition, it's never as bad
never
as you
bad
put
as
it in your head.
No question.
But started selling cars and received no training.
Some things haven't changed, my man.
That's right. And so, I'm out there running through, and I was fortunate that I worked with the guy at the time. Jeff probably only had maybe 20 stores, and I'm guessing on that number. But the guy that I worked with, the other salesman, he was their top rep at the time for all the stores.
Okay.
Name was Ralph Becker. Ralph was rough, all right, but he could flat sell cars.
Yeah.
And so a couple things I learned, and I couldn't learn Ralph's selling style, but what I could take away was his ability to assume the deal, and I learned from that.
We talked about that last night. That's a great lesson to learn, right? I mean, that's a skill. It really is.
So I gained probably, in my first 3 months, I probably gained 20 pounds selling cars.
Ooh, yeah.
And the reason is I never wanted to leave the store.
Yeah.
So for me, they started calling me one way because I was never the guy to go get lunch because I don't want to miss ups. I'd watched his lot boy. I was watching all these guys talk around, smoking cigarettes, not doing anything.
Right.
And I just wanted to prove a point that I could be as good because I wanted to compete against what my dad had accomplished.
Amazing, right? We chase those shadows.
Correct. And so I wanted to do that. And so to me, I knew what I was doing. There was no way I could fail type of thing.
Yep.
And the first 2 or 3 months hit me pretty hard. I was like, man, I'm not that good at this. And it just shocked me.
Yeah, it's self-awareness.
So when I was 19, and so, I'll never forget it. One of the things with the Ralph guy, I'm sitting there and it's cold, and I am right there by the door waiting for the next car to come in, right? Pulls in, and I think, all right, I got the spot. There's no one that can beat me to this. Ralph gets up from his desk, looks down at his watch, and says, awesome, my 3 o'clock's here. Named her name, all right? And so I watch him go out the door, and I'm within an earshot of it. And then he introduces himself. He didn't know who she was.
Right.
And I thought,
Cold. I love it.
I loved it. So
those are the assassins. Those are the ones the silent skaters.
Correct.
They get all the little tricks in the book, and that's how you learn though. And we talked about that last night. How you learn these lessons the hard way, because they then leave an indelible impression upon you. Right? You learn about a lot of things that you shouldn't do too. Correct?
Well, how do you mean?
In other words, you're a guy who has a bar of integrity. I mean, you operate from a place of integrity at the end of the day. And so we watched some of the superstars back in the 80s and 90s that did things a little bit differently than we do today.
I could never pull off my selling style. I could never do what Ralph did.
Right.
But I could learn what made him successful and apply that.
No question.
And so when I give you an example on when I talk about him assuming the deal, right? I've watched him close deals, and we all want our reps to do this, but not everybody has the courage to do this. So customer requests a certain payment. I mean, he'd just go back to the desk, come right back, and literally just, hey, I tried to get you that, we can't do it, but I went ahead and had the car pulled back, they're getting it cleaned up for you, and he just assumed it and went on with it. And I just watched that, and you understand if is that something I would necessarily do or do today? I don't know. I don't know. However, but in selling, you do have to assume and move and lead the customer forward.
You use the perfect word, lead, and because most of the prospects coming through the door in dealerships today are negotiating a car deal every 2, 3, maybe 4 years. They have no experience. They're uncomfortable. Their biggest fear walking in the door is making a mistake. And if we can take that fear away, then the assumptive close becomes that much easier. what I work with salespeople all the time on is make sure you're able to gain a genuine trust with the customer, because then you become what's known as a trusted advisor. That's not how Ralph operated. Ralph operated a little bit differently, but I think the way you and I have talked about how we approach our business, right? You're selling every day at J&L. It's no different. We want to do the right thing by the client, help them make better decisions, help them grow their business. That's a little bit different approach than what Ralph was looking to do. Ralph's looking to feed his family, right? At the end of the day.
Correct. And I can remember my first few months. Jeff, Mr. Weiler had come in and pulled me into the office, and it's just me and him, and I'm thinking, all right, I got the audience here. This is what I want, right? And I remember him asking his first words, "Why'd you quit school?"
Wow.
And so I just explained my situation and what I wanted to do, and he came back with, well, in 10 years, when I start looking at you as a potential general manager. And he went on for a bunch of other stuff, but what he didn't realize when he said that at that point, in my mind, and I'm 19, already thinking I deserve everything, right, and entitled to more, probably because of who I was versus...
Yeah, sure.
And so... once he said in 10 years, I kind of zoned out. I'm thinking to myself, I ain't waiting 10 years.
Exactly. Absolutely. That runway is way too long for me.
And so when you're entitled and you think people owe you things, you start bouncing around. So I went to another store, his Chevy store. Went there for a little bit.
So you stayed within the group.
Within the group.
But went to a different store.
Went to a Chevy store, and they ate me alive. Now that was an aggressive store. Guess who was running that? That was the Jim Hadley guy at the time.
Is that right? Okay.
So he had hired a team of people that, I mean, I had to go out basically on, if I wanted it up, I had to go out to the highway. Yeah. Because you couldn't, they didn't wait for them to pull them in then.
Right,
they were
flagging them down
and
wave them over. Exactly, right?
And I was like, those guys, that was an aggressive store when it came to taking ups. But so I ended up going back down with my tail between my legs to my dad's store.
Okay.
And I justified it logically by saying I want to learn from my dad.
Okay.
All right. When the reality was, I was probably looking for an easier path.
It's okay.
All right. And so
I quit though. See, there's a big difference. You made an adjustment. You didn't quit.
No.
There's a big difference.
No, my vision and what I wanted to accomplish, which was to be a GM of a store, was clear for me. And so, my dad can be pretty direct. He's hard on me. I got a great relationship with my dad.
That's a gift, though.
He was an awesome salesperson. He was a probably even better general manager. And so I'd have deals, back then you had the X board up there for the deals, and I'd take, my desk was literally right outside the glass sales office, right? And so I'd go in to work a deal, and I'd get so upset, because if I didn't have a signed buyer's order, because back then, right, I had to have a signed buyer's order, I had to have a deposit.
Don't bring it up to me.
I had to not bring it. So if I didn't have all this, he'd get so angry at me. I mean, he's trying to rip the export off the wall, and he's pounding it, but he can't grab it because it's tight. And I'm sitting there thinking, my customer's out here watching this stuff, right? And so I've had my buyer's orders crumpled up, and I've had to kind of take them back.
Uncrease the edges, bring it back over.
So the best though is when, I'll never forget this. So open showroom, right? And I'm talking to the customer, and he's standing behind me listening to how I'm doing this. And I don't even remember what I said, but I said something, and he goes, all I could see out of the corner of my eye was him throwing his arms up in the air like, what the shit?
You can curse here, it's all right. We use 4-letter words once in a while, don't we, fellas? So no worries, kids, just plug your ears, that's all.
And so that's what sales manager eventually pulled me aside and said, hey, we're going to work your deals on the side.
Right.
But
see, that happens on the side of a Little League field every day in this country. Yes. Or the soccer field. I mean, we got parents throwing their arms up, it's no different. Right? It was you watching your son compete at that point.
Correct.
And he wants the best for you. Doesn't want you to make mistakes. Like we were just saying before, like you said, I'd never let my son do that. We don't want our kids to make mistakes, but truthfully, that's the way they learn. We got to let them make those mistakes. That way it leaves the impression. Yeah. That provides that memory recall for them.
And so, one thing with the Weiler Group that was great is, and I got exposed to Tony Robbins, very early on. I did like a one-day seminar when I was up in Cincinnati. I attended that, and I bought all into it. It didn't mean I applied everything.
Right.
I was able to apply some of the basic stuff that you learn,
that's
right?
That's the idea anyway.
But I bought into, I believed in what he was teaching. And so, as I fast forward through, and I'm struggling a little bit, in terms of what I wanted.
Right.
All right, so I'm doing well selling cars, but for me, I didn't feel fulfilled.
Right.
And I was not making the level of income and having the lifestyle that I really wanted.
Yeah, it's funny because Tony Robbins talks about that from this perspective. He says, if your expectation of what your life should be doesn't match what it actually is, that's where you have conflict internally.
Yes.
And so you're wrestling with that inside, saying this isn't my path.
So Tony's big on having empowering beliefs, right? And so I can remember, and so my vision's clear, all right? And I go from this guy that has all this confidence, I cannot be beat, I will not fail. And then, you sell cars long enough, now I'm going on 2 years, I'm getting punched in the nose every single day. And so that confidence starts to waver.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, I'm 2 years in and I'm not getting where I want, right? And so we were all, I remember this conversation and talking with the other reps, and I remember thinking, and I'm outperforming some of these guys, most of them.
But you were older than you too, right?
We came up with some type of income number, and it was probably $400,000 or $500,000 a year. And I remember saying out loud, I don't know if I'll ever make that.
Wow.
And what woke me up wasn't the fact that I said that. It was the fact that another sales rep who wasn't even performing to my level literally said, well, you probably won't if you think that way.
Holy cow.
And so the Anthony Robbins stuff came back to me, and I thought, what kind of belief system do I have?
Right.
And so then I started thinking about my dad a little bit, and I can remember working deals with him, and we're walking up the hall, and I'm explaining where I'm at in the deal,
right.
and he's going to, I'm TOing it to him, right? And so I'm feeling, all right, I'm going to get this deal. Every deal matters when you're selling cars,
Absolutely.
right? And so he's sitting there, and we're walking up. I said, you think you'll close it? And he looks at me and he goes, well, if I can't close it, no one can.
I love it.
And so,
pay attention. There's a lesson right there in setting up your belief system, right? If I can't close it, nobody can.
Correct.
You have to have that belief.
And so when I look at that belief system versus the one I really had for myself, all right, there's a difference between thinking you have an empowering belief system and actually having it. And so that's when I started doing a lot more of the training and got into that a little bit. But I had an opportunity to start J&L with a friend. And I remember after about a year and a half with my dad, I was 22 at the time, I said, Dad, I'm gonna start a marketing company.
Right.
And he looked at me and he...
Cross-eyed.
He was calm, but he said, I'll never forget it. And I don't want this to be taken wrong, but I would have said this to my son as well if my son was in the same spot I was in at the time. He looked at me and goes, you'll be back here in 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
And that's how many years later?
28.
28 years later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dad, because that was motivation, I guarantee you.
Yes, it was.
That was motivation.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Now listen, I mean, those are seminal moments, and you say, how we don't want our kids to make mistakes, or we start to say things or think the same way that our parents did. It's perspective. Your perspective back then was, I have this long runway. I have an opportunity. If I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to make it now. I don't want to make it at 50, but I'm going to make it now. By the way, you can make them at 50. I'm doing it every day. But the truth is that was a motivating.
I stopped making mistakes about 5 years ago.
Yeah, right. Don't worry, I got the market cornered for you, I promise you. But that motivation from Dad, I think, has to be an early driver for you now.
Oh, definitely. My first 2 years,
you couldn't go back at that point. When he said to you, you're coming back, you said, now I'm never coming back.
We started a company in the middle, right when we started the company, literally the Gulf War had just launched.
Okay.
And so that was the number one excuse,
Thank you, Bart.
right? That was the number one objection. All the dealers were, I want to wait and see how this is going to go. And
the built-in objection.
I had savings saved up, and that's what I took all that and put it into the company. And there was no way, if I had to fail, I'm starting from ground zero.
All in.
Correct.
That is all in, man.
Correct.
Burn the boats.
There was no plan B.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. But see, but that to me is, if you're going, you got to go 100%.
Correct.
You have to go 100%.
It has to be 100% commitment, and it was 7 days a week. I drove 55,000 miles a year. This is before internet, right? So I couldn't just hop on and do some type of video presentation. If I wanted to sell someone, I had to drive there.
Get in front of them.
That's correct. So,
and by the way, that's still the most effective way, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting in front of them. We could do all the PowerPoints we want, but getting in front of somebody is magic.
It's interesting because I think initially dealers went through this wave of like, let's just do it online, because everyone thought that was easier.
Absolutely.
And then as everyone shifted to doing that, it then became easier and less crowded to do it in person.
Absolutely.
And so I think there's a shift back to that now. And
you see it just in terms of the airlines right now, because their business is booming right now, especially on the commercial side with business travel, because people realized about 10, 12 years ago, we got to go back in front of people and talk to them like they're human beings, not chats and emails and let's Skype call. I mean, the best and biggest deals are done sitting down across from each other. We could have done this, by the way, over a telephone line or a Skype line. I wanted you here live and in person. He accommodated, by the way, which is the sign of a mensch, but it's different. It's different when you're in front of somebody and it's live and in person. So, So the early days, you're doing 55,000 miles a year.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not bombing around.
It was all events. I'm working the events. I'm selling the events. I had one employee that I stole from my dad.
Okay.
And,
sorry, Dad.
And she helped me basically fulfill and organize everything. And
what were those days like when it was just you and her, a two-person company? It was mayhem. Just like get to the end of the day and just get it done.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like work.
Oh, that's $1 million
so it was a lot of fun. I finally, when I say that I work 7 days a week, so I thought I was moving into an industry where I didn't have to work Saturdays anymore. Right. I was working the events, and so I for 2 straight years, it got to the point where eventually I had to tell dealers, because they all wanted me to work the event.
Of course.
And I said, guys, I can't commit to working these events because I'll only be able to sell 4 a month.
Right. Right. There's no leverage. There's no leverage there.
Keep doing that. So.
And I get that from a dealer's perspective. And I should, full disclosure, I was a client of yours as a dealer for years, and we always wanted to do our events with Michelle Riviela. It was critically important for us that she was phenomenal. And my guys, she had a great way with my team, my guys, because salespeople can be a little bit different, like herding cats on a regular basis. She just had a great way about her. But I got to say that about just about everybody that I've come in contact with in your business. Your brother Tom, I say it all the time, he was my guy as well. I would go out to NADA, I'd look forward to sitting with him, I'd sign a deal at NADA, and then I'd wander back over to your booth on a regular basis, and if he was sitting with somebody, I'd say, hey man, I just signed up, don't waste your time, make sure you sign today.
He's probably texting you, hey, get over here.
He did a pretty good job without me. I mean, he didn't need much help. Tom was outstanding. But I think both of you guys.
I think my brother's probably, out of the 3 of us, myself, my dad, he's probably the most gifted salesperson we have.
He's got a great way about him. He's such an eminently likable guy, but he also has that instinct where he knows how to close.
Yeah.
Right? That's a really rare combination. But what I want to really say is the culture in your organization is palpable. I can feel it. When I go to NADA and I walk over to your booth, there's a buzz around J&L's booth every single year, and that's a credit to you. How do you develop such an incredible culture over there? Because you went from 2 people to a whole lot more than 2. How many people now?
Gosh, we got 75.
75 people. Yeah. And how do you maintain that, almost that?
And then you got about 150 event coordinators, promotion coordinators that'll help.
And they all get it. They all buy into the J&L culture and the J&L way of doing things. How did you develop that? And tell me what it was like, early years to today, to keep it intact.
I don't think. For one, I never intentionally tried to manufacture a culture. And I think that's a big mistake businesses make, thinking they can manufacture.
Right.
The culture is what it becomes.
It's got to be authentic.
It's got to be real. And so success breeds, I think, a good culture, for one.
Yeah.
we had people that truly believed in what we were selling back when you were doing
Third
that.
time you use that word with me today. It's critical.
They believed in it, and so you're getting the feedback from the customers, but it can't start from that. They bought into the philosophy of it, and so I've thought a lot over the last few years about. I really, for lack of a better, I think I got lucky in a lot of areas. Now, hard work creates luck.
I will argue that. You know that.
And so, well, what I mean by that is the things that truly made us unique. I did not sit down and think and strategize that.
Okay,
It
but I
came
won't
to
say
me,
lucky. I'll say
and then
instinctive.
we're smart enough to position it and recognize, oh, this is what's working, right?
It's instinctual though, to a degree. I get that.
So
that's
when-
not luck.
Yeah, when you're first starting, and not every event is successful, right? And so when
gotta deal
you're
with the
first
stinkers.
starting, and all you're doing is sending out mail, because back then it was only mail. There was no landing pages, emails, and there was no data analytics.
different business.
You called up Polk, and there wasn't even people doing a lot of previous customer work at the time.
Amazing, right? You think about how
unbelievable.
important that is to a dealer's business plan today. We're going to break for a second. I want to talk about that when we come back, because you and I talked about last night, like J&L is not just an event company at
No.
this point. There's so much more to the picture. So I want to pick up on that in just a second when we come back. But you and I discussed it in detail last night, so we'll share that with our audience when we come back.
All right.
We'll be back in just a couple of minutes on the 6.